Welcome to the Empowered Money Girl, where we break down the barriers to financial confidence, celebrate women's wins, and reveal the secrets to living boldly and well. I'm your host, Josette Mandela. So let me ask you, what happens when life, aging, and money all collide? For many families, it turns into a crisis. But what if it could be a plan instead? Laura Lynn Morrissey is here to show us how. She's the founder and CEO of Silver Savvy, an award-winning leader who helps families and businesses navigate aging with confidence and clarity. After a successful career in financial services and building and selling two home care companies, she saw firsthand how important it is to bridge that gap between financial security and real-world independence. Today, she brings deep financial insight, caregiving experience, and expertise in aging and dementia care to help people design their next chapter with dignity and control. If you're ready to rethink aging as a designed, empowered life stage, you're in the right place. Please welcome the insightful, compassionate, and future-focused Laura Lynn Morrissey.
Thank you so much, Josette. That was wonderful. Can I take a copy of that?
Absolutely.
Serious, that's wonderful.
So, Laura Lynn, can you take us back to the beginning? What was your path like that led you to where you are today?
Well, it's interesting. I remember in college, that commencement address, talked about, knowing where your plan is and, think about your future. And I think for me, I never had a plan, except I wanted to be self-sufficient. I needed to support myself. That came pretty early when I was a child. So I came from a pretty tumultuous background. And so I learned early on to find my North Star and to stay very focused on becoming independent and not necessarily rely on others for financial independence or other things. So I decided I was going to go to law school and actually changed my mind when I got sick of being broke and I went into financial services. I had absolutely no idea. I didn't know what a bond was. I didn't know what a stock was. I had no idea. All I knew was I needed money. And so I took a job in financial services and I stayed in financial services and thrived for 20 years, which was kind of shocking because that would have never been my choice initially. But as my career grew, I lived in San Francisco, I lived in New York and Boston. My parents were aging. My dad passed of brain cancer, glioblastoma, and my mom had suffered from all kinds of health issues. So, like so many women, like so many daughters and daughters-in-law, I was a caregiver, and I think it's become more of uh, okay topic to bring out and talk about. But when I was in business, it really wasn't something that women could really freely talk about. You couldn't talk about having to care for your parents. You had to be very quiet about it because honestly, it would impact your career because you had others that didn't have those same pressures. So um, I was caring for my mom, and one day I decided that I had done enough in financial services. I had reached, in my opinion, the goals that I was going to reach, and I needed to do something else. And home care was on my mind all the time. I was dealing with home care companies. I saw what they did well. I thought, you know what, I can do this better. So I bought a couple of home care companies that had great reputations, but had really no infrastructure, and that's my thing. So I built out these great this great company with an amazing culture, really implementing all of the things that I had learned in financial services in a customer service role, and grew the business in the Boston area along with my husband who ran operations. And that's where I learned that we are not alone in this aging thing, that there are people that do it well, that there is a recipe for success. You can use different language, but it's all the same in terms of having a plan. And that, we're aging well. I'm sorry, we're aging longer, we're living longer, but we're not necessarily living those last 10 or so years as well as we live the first, part of our life. And so, I saw folks who did not have a plan and could I assist with that? So I had an opportunity to sell my business and felt I still had an awful lot of advocacy left And so I started Silver Savvy 2 years ago, and I have been as busy as I want to be. And I'm excited to do podcasts and talk with you, but I also love working with clients because I really want them to understand they're not alone and that there's a way to deal with the challenges of aging.
That's amazing. And so sorry to hear about your dad. Um,
Oh, thank you. He did it his way.
well, that's what you really want when you get to that point, though, is you want to do it your way. And it sounds like you found your way, as well as have a way to help others get to that next level where they can have that plan and figure out what are those last few years going to look like in a way that they can actually enjoy them, even if they, like you say, have health challenges or different things going on. So
I
how
think
did
that's,
you?
I think exactly. I mean, I think, what I saw in home care, because I was very hands-on, so I was with families all the time, helping them to navigate, because a lot of times families will see what's best for mom and dad before mom and dad will see it.
Hmm.
And how do you navigate that effectively so that you don't alienate your mom and dad because they've lived their lives with dignity and they've been successful and they've done the best they can. Now's not the time to start, challenging their ability to make good decisions. So, helping families um, to put those plans in place, whatever it might be, whether it's staying in the home safely, whether it's looking for an alternative community, whether it's looking for short-term assistance, through home care, at the end of the day, I have an eye towards how do I work with the families, specifically daughters and daughters-in-law for the most part, and but also how do I work with the moms and the dads and the men and women who are aging and and you're never too old to put a plan in place. And I think I know, based on your work, that oftentimes people think, well, I'm too old to start looking at my physical health. I've got arthritis and I can't do anything different. Well, that's not true. Let me talk to you about how you can strengthen your body. Or, I don't necessarily have a financial plan. That's okay. You can put a financial plan in place. If you don't have a professional, let's get you one. But, at the end of the day, it's never too late to start looking at the seven principles of aging well and putting something in place um, that will help you achieve, your goals at whatever point in your life you're at. And I think that's really what I learned when I was in home care. There are people that have already done it, and there are others that may not realize that they should have it, and I'm here to help.
Oh, I love that. And so what are those seven steps that you had talked about that someone should follow?
Well, they're based on the certifications that I've gotten over the years within the home care industry. So I'll just touch on them briefly. So health and physical wellness. So, we know that we hear about exercising all day long, but, do we know, are we aware that as we age, our exercise needs to adjust with our aging? We need to focus more on preserving our muscles, keeping our bones strong, especially for women who are
Hmm.
experiencing, menopause, perimenopause, and so forth. Um, so looking at what is our health, what do we do to maintain our health? What are we doing to maintain our physicality? And that is tied into, cognitive and emotional wellness. We know that staying physically active helps with our mood, helps with our outlook on life, helps with our brain health. Staying socially connected. So social connection is the next one. So uh, a lot of us, and I know I'm going through this now. I'm 61 years old, and I have this incredible network of friends and family. And over the years, things have begun to change. And, if you remember when you were in school, every year you had to go and make new friends. Or if you moved, you had to make new friends. You went to college, you made new friends. You started a new job, you made new friends. Those skills are rusty as you get older. You're used to having that circle of folks that you're assuming are going to last forever. So, social connection, making sure that you're always looking at either, connecting with new folks or reconnecting with old folks. Very, very important in terms of aging well. And then home and safety, in your home and safety. So a lot of folks live in homes that aren't really necessarily set up to age well. So, what are the things that we want to do that we need to do to stay healthy and to stay safe in our homes if we decide that we want to stay in our homes? And that goes back to physicality, health, and physical wellness. So, to exercise and keep our core strong and keep our bodies strong enables us to function properly and enables us to stay in our home safely. And then financial wellness, which is, uh, not just retirement planning, but understanding what am I going to need as I get older in terms of budgeting, in terms of, health management, because we know getting older sometimes requires us to outlay cash for hospital stays and, various other health needs. And then legacy. So, what matters most to me? Have we thought about that? What matters most to me now may not be what matters to me when I'm, in another 10 years. So it's revisiting, what does my legacy look like? I know I just left a meeting with my estate planner, and my husband and I were looking at our plan, and we changed what our legacy is going to look like. We decided that our values have begun to evolve over the past 5 years, and we want to change how our estate looks. But more important than that, how do you want to be remembered? And what are you doing now to prepare for that in the future? So those are basically the principles of aging well, and you apply them at, there are some areas where I feel like I'm really rocking it and other areas where I've really laxed. And we actually at Silver Savvy, we take stock in each one of these areas, and we periodically for our clients will go back and evaluate, where are you in this journey? And we will develop an action plan and a checklist that's easy to kind of assimilate and to, consume in small bites, and then on a periodic basis go back and revisit to make sure that you're on track.
Oh, I love that. Definitely a holistic view of where are you at now, and like you say, helping them understand, are you able to stay in this home, or are there things that we need to do to make this home possible for you to stay at it, as well as, well, if we decide that this isn't the right place for you, where would be a better place? And let's look at your financial picture, because if we don't know what you've got to work with, then that's not going to work very well. And oh, by the way, what's going on with your health and your fitness side of things, because that can also make a difference on which path we take. So
Absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely. And I think, people think if they have a chronic issue like arthritis, or maybe they have something more serious, that, health and physical wellness isn't as important anymore. And it's just a question of survival. And I say that's not true, that, there's a way to, keep your body as strong as possible for as long as possible. And the goal that I always have for most of my clients is to enable them to stay in their homes, because 85% of us want to stay in our homes. It's where our memories are. It's where we love and live the most. And so the goal for me is to help folks do that. But in the event you decide you want to move into another community, there's a whole process around that as well. But I will add, the thing with assisted living communities, given that there's going to be more of us over 65 pretty soon than under 18, these communities are very, very busy with wait lists now. And a couple of years ago, I could have found a new community for a client, within 30 days or 45 days. And now it's actually more like 12 months, 24 months, depending on where they want to go. So that's really a
Wow.
conversation that you want to have much earlier in your planning cycle.
Wow. I had no idea that the cycle was that long now.
It is. Yep.
I do remember a few years ago, my mother woke up one morning and decided that being in the house and trying to take care of it, it was just too much for her. And she decided that um, I think I want to be in one of those communities. And she lives out in Arizona, so I
Oh,
wasn't able to
beautiful.
help much. But my brother lives out there, and so he was helping her finding different locations, and they found a place that she really liked, and they had all these activities, and it also was one of those communities where you could come in and be completely self-sufficient, but as your needs changed, you could just move to a different part of the um, complex depending on what your new challenges were until you got to the point where, you were at the end of life and they needed to be doing a lot more for you. So my brother liked that. My mother liked that as well because now she didn't have to worry about what happens if. And but I
Yeah, those
understand there's
continuous care communities are lovely. They sort of take a lot of the stress out of aging, and there's not enough of them. They're lovely, and Arizona is such so they have a lot of communities, but again, so many of us are moving to Arizona to get away from the cold because I'm in New England. Um, but I'm sure I'm sure that you talk to clients about situations like the, living environment and when we're doing our financial planning, I know when I was in financial services, we always had that number that, you need to, as you talk to clients, you need to be able to reserve, a certain amount of money towards your health. It's, I don't know where it is now. It's like 250,000, 285,000. It's maybe even near closer to 300,000. But that number is important because at the end of the day, um, a lot of folks don't think about the cost of health.
Mhm.
And to me, it's cheaper to manage any chronic issues that you have by eating better and by staying physically active than it is to deal with the issues once they come up. It's obviously more expensive to deal with the issues once they come up. And so my goal is to stay as proactive as you can. And again, I'm eating my own cooking. I'm 61 years old, so the things that I have learned has changed my outlook on how I live, where I live, um, how I think about aging. The fact that you can have as many careers as you want. That's another thing that I think is important for people to know that it's not
Mhm.
over when you hit 60. It's not over when you hit 50. It's not over when you hit 45. That you can reinvent yourself as often as you'd like, as long as you've got the energy and the drive.
Absolutely. And so on the financial theme here, how would you define financial independence, and how would you know if you actually achieved it?
Well, I think, it changes over time. So my needs as to become financially independent were certainly different in my 20s than in my now in my 60s and but I think there's an awareness of what am I going to need, and there's a formula. What am I going to need to be able to pay my bills? Make sure you're looking at your bills. Make sure you're aware of what you really don't need. I think constantly evaluating, do I really need to be paying for this? Is this, part of my long-term budget? Is this something that I absolutely need? That's where I am in my life. So I think being financially independent means being able to afford, yourself, be able to afford, whatever care you might need, because obviously you need to put that buffer in because surprises happen and we don't want to be caught off guard without a plan. But I think, in my 60s, for me, it's being able to afford the lifestyle that I want, and that could be, day trips. It could be long-term trips. I'm not talking about having zillions and zillions of dollars as financially independent. I'm talking about being able to afford whatever your goals are and feel as though you're living your best life. And I'll be honest with you, when I was in financial services, I lived a much bigger life, and I can tell you, I was not that happy. I had as many things as I wanted, as often as I wanted them. And on the outside, everyone's like, "Oh, you must be so successful." But in my head, in my heart, I was miserable. And now I literally saw what it was like when people are really happy. You don't need to have a lot of things. So I skinny down my life, and I am so much more at peace. But it requires a different budget, and it requires me constantly challenging myself to stay independent, and make sure that whatever I'm doing, I can afford whatever I'm doing, and that I'm not going to rely on anyone else. So, if that's
And
answers
that's
your
such
question.
Yeah, I mean that's such an interesting insight is to show uh, the people that are listening to this podcast that you see all these celebrities and everything and all this money and maybe you have that I wish, I hope uh, kind of mentality going on, thinking that oh my life will be so much better if. And the bottom line is that money isn't necessarily the thing that's going to make you happy. It's being able to pay for the things that you really want, that you'd enjoy doing, rather than some mystical number that you may not really find that all that enjoyable once you get there.
I would completely agree. I mean, again, I came from a background where I didn't really have a life coach, or I didn't have parents that they were wonderful, but they really didn't have the insight to help me avoid some of the mistakes I made. So I became very enamored with things and promotions and bigger things and more clothes and more cars and more houses. And I thought that's the panacea, is just having as many things when you want them. And that really wasn't the case. And now it's about being very comfortable spiritually. It's being happy with your friends. It's making sure you have a social network. So, I woke up one day, I was in a very, very busy, very demanding job. I was all over the country. I was constantly traveling. I had amazing clients. I had great relationships. I had no roots. I had no community involvement. I was not involved when I went home. I had friends, but that it wasn't anything. It was all about work and that next accomplishment. And now, as I get older, I've seen when people are at peace, it is not about the things they have. It's about who's around them and what are you doing for them. So I changed my whole outlook. I decided I wanted to be more of I wanted to be more giving in my community. I wanted to be more involved. I wanted deeper roots. And I really changed my outlook. And it's not that I found this on my own. I saw other people doing it, and I thought, I want that. I want that incredible peace that these folks have. And they were doing what I just said. They were eating better than I ever did. They were exercising. They were connected with the environment. I took up hiking. I took up walking. I mean, I live in an apple barn. um, Up in a ridge in New Hampshire. I mean, that's about as far from Manhattan as you get,
Mm.
and I love it. So, I haven't figured it out for sure. There are days where I'm like, all right, I'm giving this up. But for the most part, I've definitely feel like I'm on the right track. And this is what I talk to my clients about, what's important to you and how do you, get on that path that's going to bring you more peace and self-acceptance and be able to afford the life that you really want and need.
So, what advice would you have for women who want to start building their financial independence, especially if they've relied on a partner or their job uh, to to be what they are?
Yeah. It's interesting. I've worked with clients who were married and they looked at, their partner as being responsible for all the money, and they were they pay the bills and they didn't think about it. It was just very
Mm.
traditional. And then when things happened, and that their partner had health issues or otherwise became incapacitated, they realized they didn't even have access to the money that they had access to while their partner was healthy. So, to me, I think that, I go back to, first of all, it's never too late. It's very, very important that you understand, you know, what, what are the bills and when I got married, my husband started to take over, the bills.
Mm.
And I was like, wait a minute. Did not want to lose that independence, because I believe that it's also important to have that information at your fingertips. So it's collecting and it's inventorying. What are the bills that run this house? What are the things that I do not know? Where are those passwords to those online accounts? Where is the money going? And in the event that, something should happen, how am I going to pay those bills? So it's a question of taking an inventory. And I did this up for myself a few years ago, and I was able to shave off $7,000 in just extraneous stuff that I did not need. So take an inventory of what are your bills, if you know, what are your subscriptions and your phone, and what are the, you know, what are the bills that are coming into the house? And then what are the things that you may be spending money on that you're not even thinking about? You know, you may go to TJ Maxx, or, you know, you may like shopping and you just mindlessly go to Starbucks. One year I tracked, and this was during COVID when I was in home care and I was on the road all the time. You're going to be very surprised at this number. I love Starbucks. And I actually tracked how much I spent on Starbucks. Are you ready for this? $8,000 one year. I was
Wow.
at Starbucks 2 and 3 times a day at $10 and $12 a whack. And yeah, I love those flat whites. But that is, you know, that's like lost money that you don't even think about. You know, imagine imagine being aware of what monies you're spending that you're not even thinking about, especially when you've got an app that just beep, you know, beep, $10, beep, $12. So inventory all of the things that you're doing. You'd be very surprised where your money is going. And then begin to think about, can I afford this? And if you can't afford this, then think about, how do I give it up? I know for me, I just gave it up. I literally don't go to Starbucks anymore. I have this great coffee machine at home, and I make better coffee than Starbucks. But I was an absolute Starbucks fan, and it's a great company, but I just don't go there anymore. So I think once you have an idea of what your bills are, and what you can afford, and you begin to pare down, because you know it's empowering to know where is the money going. You feel great. I'm telling you, when I go through my budget every year, and first of all, I'm always horrified. I'm like, how did that, you know, slip into my budget? The things that I do, I still do it. I still let things slip in. It's empowering at the end of the day when you found out, this is how much I need. This is how much I have. It might be a little bit scary if the numbers don't align, but then you can put a plan together to make it happen. And it may not be overnight, but it's really the first step in empowering yourself to be financially independent.
Oh, absolutely. And that's certainly something I tell my clients all the time. And my rule is that you do it at least once a quarter. I'd like you to
Oh,
do it once a month, but at least once a quarter, because
oh,
I,
that's good.
yeah, I
You
don't
do it
want,
once a year,
yeah,
once a
I
quarter.
don't want you having that surprise at the end of the year going, oh my God, how did I spend $8,000 on Starbucks? Well, like you said, that
Oh
was
yeah,
one of those things that you did it without even thinking. It's like it's morning. Oh, look, there's a Starbucks. Let me grab a quick
absolutely.
something and then move on with my
Absolutely.
day. And it, like you say, it's just so easy these days with the just tap my card or even use my phone. I mean, how
Absolutely.
much easier could you make it?
Well, that's it. You don't even realize it's money,
Yep,
you know. And the
exactly.
next thing you know, you've spent all this money that never you can't get back. You know, even looking at um we moved houses. You know, we went from a an oil burning home to a more efficient energy home to save all of that oil every year. You know, so we made together, my husband and I started looking at, how can we be more efficient with the money we're spending? You know, even looking at your cars. You know, we used to have trucks and SUVs and whatnot. And we looked at the gas. We were spending $900 a month on gas. That you never get that back. So, you know, is there a way to be more efficient with the car you drive? The money adds up, and if you start looking at all these little wins, you know, I look at AARP. I never was a big, I never really thought about AARP, and then I suddenly started getting the magazines, and I went into AARP and saw all these amazing deals for cable, for Netflix, for my phone, T-Mobile, and so forth. Saved money there. So I'm a pretty big fan of, and I'm going to start doing it quarterly because I was doing it yearly. But you make a great point. Should be doing it a lot more. But it's empowering to have that information. First, it's empowering to be informed. Then it's empowering to be in control.
So what's next for you? Any ambitions that still drive you?
Absolutely. You know, I think for me, it's really, I'm really becoming laser focused on helping people with this housing challenge. So I'm becoming more and more adept at helping folks to find alternative housing, stay in their house. And because that's really, to me, one of the top challenges. I have less control over the healthcare system.
Mhm.
That's really but I feel as though helping people to stay in their homes or find alternative housing is a big challenge. So that's really where I'm focusing within Silver Savvy, and then just continue to educate people on the idea that you've put all these plans in place for your weddings and colleges and other type of big events, but yet you're aging and you're living far longer, and you need a plan that's proactive, just as proactive as other major milestones in your life. And you can't age the way that your parents aged. You have to age with a plan.
Oh, absolutely. Um, so if you could give one message to the women listening today about owning their own independence, what would it be?
Again, I think you're always evolving. So, I think women often feel it's too late for me, or I'm exhausted, I can't do it. I think starting small, it's never too late. Every day is a new day to start, and just start small. Understand, what your financial demands are today, and just become informed. And then from there, you can decide how you want to go forward. But I think it's never too late. I don't care if you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, it doesn't matter. It's never too late. But I think it's important that if you aren't aware of your financial, uh, you know, well-being, and you're not aware of where your money's going, or if you're in a relationship where you've enjoyed, not having to worry about it, I think it's very, very important. And any estate attorney will tell you, because I work with a lot of estate attorneys who deal with this. It's very important that you get in control and become informed with where you are financially, because there may be a day when you need to know that information and you're not in control.
Oh, absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us today. And a
Thank
huge
you.
thank you to Laura Lynn Morrissey for sharing her wisdom and energy with us. If you
Thank you.
found value in this conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the Empowered Money Girl with your friends. The more we can spread these stories, the more women we can empower to live boldly, both financially and in every part of life. Until next time, keep thriving. And remember, your journey to empowerment starts with you.